Now, y'all know I love a good night at the theater, but I'm not just going out to be entertained. Sure, I want the acting to be good, but I also want to learn something too. That's why I'm excited about Timeline Theater Company's Chicago premiere of Notes from the Field. The show uses verbatim accounts from students, faculty, folks who've been incarcerated, and more to show the intersections of America's education and criminal legal systems and how they can and must be transformed. You don't want to miss it, and I don't want to miss it either. Notes from the Field is running now through March 24th at Timeline Theater in Lakeview. For tickets, visit timelinetheater.com. That's theater with an R-E. Today on CityCast Chicago, what is the future of ShotSpotter? Bring Chicago Home's $1 million ad battle heats up, and new COVID-19 guidelines could be on the horizon. All that and more with my guest, author and professor Ariane Nettles, and Crane Chicago reporter Corley J. It's Friday, February 16th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Good morning, Ari. Welcome back to the podcast.
Good morning.
Always good to have you, my friend.
I love being here.
Corley, welcome back.
What up?
How you been, G? It's good to see you.
Yeah, I'm good. Happy to be here too.
This was a huge week in terms of celebrations, right? We still got Lunar New Year going on. It's Black History Month, all year long. But also, it was Fat Tuesday this week. It was Valentine's Day. And for me, when I think about all those things, including Black Restaurant Week, I think February sounds like a damn good time to be out here eating in these streets. And so I wanted to know, what is the best thing you ate during this essentially multi-holiday week? Ari, I'm going to start with you. What's one good thing you ate this week?
Okay, so one good thing I ate is Saturday I went to Barrio in River North, which I love. I go there a lot. The people are good. The food is good. And I got a picture of, a little hibiscus margarita,
That sounds good as hell.
I think that is the best thing that I ate. But I did have this really huge taco salad. Mm-hmm. And you might say, oh, but it's a salad. But no, the salad is as big as your head. It's huge. Mm-hmm. It's enough to eat there. It's enough to take home and eat there. And it's on a bed of a fried tortilla. It is delicious.
I don't even know why I asked this question. The description already got me messed up. I ain't had breakfast today.
I haven't had it either. And now I want it. I'm like, hey, Barrio, when you open, can y'all just, can I just swing back?
I'll be there.
Yeah, can I just swing back, take one to go?
Corley, between the weather being a little bit better, so it feels nice to be outside, and then all of these holidays, right? Whether it's eating dumplings for Lunar New Year, I had a whole bunch of ponchki on Fat Thursday last week and Fat Tuesday this week. What was a great thing you had this week, whether it was holiday related or not?
Yeah, so mine was kind of holiday related. So, it was just Valentine's Day.
Come on.
So my husband made some marry me chicken with chicken breast, with some sun-dried tomatoes, made his own sauce with the heavy whipping cream, put the basil in it over some bow tie pasta. And I got it for lunch today. Cause we actually went out. We went out before he made this. He was like, you know what? I'm gonna give you the Valentine's Day special. We're gonna go out. We gonna drink, and I'm gonna come back in. I'm gonna cook. So he was grown. So
that's why you married that man.
He came back and he threw down in the kitchen, and it was fire. I ain't never heard of marry me chicken, but I'll marry him again because he made that chicken. So
now I think you put them two things together, a little hibiscus margarita picture, a little marry me chicken, and then for the appetizer, I'll finish us off. One of my favorite bars to go to is Easy Does It. It's like a wine bar, nice music club that you can go through. But they've had a pop-up with Mother Shucker oysters for about the last year. And so they had a Valentine's Day pop up. And I'm going to say the oysters were fantastic. It had I want to say it was a tarragon gelée and a rosé bubbles inside of the brine. The oysters were nice and meaty. The chefs who were there love to explain it like, these came from Rhode Island, we like to get them from Rhode Island and from Maine. I was like, hey, wherever you get them from, they was fine. And so I had a nice Valentine's Day at Easy Does It. If you're not familiar, it's a great wine bar. They have great music up in Logan Square. So let's put them things together. Hibiscus margarita, some great appetizer oysters, and then some marry me chicken that'll make you want to marry your partner all over again.
And since I'm single,
Ari go always be like, if you listening.
Exactly. If somebody want to go to Easy Does It, I'm probably free.
We did not just come here today to talk about all of the great food that we had this week. We also bring our friends in every Friday to look back on some of those big pieces of news that was taking place in our city. And we got to start with a huge one. I want to say it for a few years now, there's been a big push amongst organizers in this city to get rid of ShotSpotter. It's been renamed Sound Thinking, but essentially it's a gunshot detection technology that the city has been in partnership with and has ran taxpayers like us $50 million. And now the contract was set to expire today. And so people were wondering, which way is Mayor Brandon Johnson going to go? Is he going to be like his predecessor and renew the contract? Or is he going to stick with his campaign promise to reject ShotSpotter? And Ari, late Tuesday afternoon, we got an announcement out of the mayor's office. What were the details?
The details were that Mayor Brandon Johnson decided that he would not extend the full ShotSpotter contract. Recently, as of Wednesday, there's also talk about a temporary extension and whether that would be approved, because I believe it was proposed that there would be a 6-month extension instead of the full extension. But like you mentioned, Sound Thinking has basically said that they are not into that. And if that is the case, then the contract would end Friday night at midnight. And so that would be today.
And from advocates and organizers who've been pushing back against ShotSpotter, it's not simply they do not like the use of technology in sort of the criminal legal system, right? That's something we cannot control at this point. It is based on reports out of the MacArthur Justice System, the city's inspector general, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office that says ShotSpotter is largely inaccurate, doesn't lead to arrests, doesn't lead to gun crimes being reported and sort of moved through the system, that it is largely centered in Black and brown neighborhoods, leads to over-policing, leads to charged up officers being sent into communities because these calls take priority over others. Essentially expecting for there to be some sort of action involving a gun. And wow, Sound Thinking continues to stand by their metrics. Report after report after report from both city offices as well as independent monitors have said, with the data we have, there is no way to prove that ShotSpotter is doing what you say it is meant to do, which is not only detect gunshots, but sort of better assist, law enforcement with, getting to those situations and serving either victims or apprehending perpetrators, whatever the case may be.
Yes. And as you mentioned, this is a really expensive technology. And so just out of pure efficiency and saving money, it just doesn't seem as if there is a reason to continue to keep using this technology. I'm not sure if there are additional technologies that could be used. I think that ShotSpotter has been kind of a innovator in this category. And that's why I think that this has been such a big deal, because being able to say that you are used by a city like Chicago, a city that is quote unquote, we're known for having violence or a need for this type of technology, has allowed the company to grow year after year. And so if Chicago, which of course it seems as if that is the truth.
If it joins Dallas and Atlanta and a host of other cities that have ended their contracts.
Yes, absolutely. Now that company, it is likely that other cities could follow suit. So it's not even just about Chicago. It is about Chicago being a trendsetter in that way, that if Chicago does not renew its contract, that other cities are likely to also not renew theirs as well.
He is not renewing the full contract, but the goal seemingly is to have ShotSpotter instituted through at least September, meaning it will see the DNC. It will go through the summer. And so it feels in many ways that while he is, people have been celebrating ShotSpotter's gone, it kind of like he placated both sides. He's like, you're going to get more time with this, but this is the last 6 months. And so they focus more on like giving people time to transition, figuring out what will we use next? Where will this money go? Especially with him hiring the current police chief who has made it clear he believes in technology's role. And so we will wait and see. From ShotSpotter to another big story that will impact most Chicagoans, especially those who go into the ballot box in about a month, we're talking about Bring Chicago Home. Earlier this week, we talked about the differences between a binding and a non-binding referendum and what those things mean. And Bring Chicago Home is an example of a binding referendum. Meaning we will go in and vote on whether or not Chicago should institute this policy, which essentially is a real estate transfer tax increase on properties valued at $1 million and more, and a slight reduction in the real estate transfer tax for properties under $1 million, with the goal of creating a secure funding source for homelessness efforts. But the decision on whether or not we voted in or voted down has not yet been made because we have not gotten in the booth, which means there is still time for Chicagoans to be swayed in favor or against. Corley, what does that look like?
It's going to be crazy, G. It's going to be so crazy. You got this trade group, Illinois Realtors. They spent $1 million to telling people to vote no for this transfer tax, right? They're saying it's going to impact homeowners, it's going to make you pay more in property taxes, and it's going to make rent go up. So they spent $1 million on different campaigns. The first mailer, they sent the sneak peek of the first mailer that would go out to Chicagoans, telling them to vote no. But on the other side, we got supporters, of the ordinance that sent out their campaign materials like, nah, y'all should vote yes, because like you said, it's going to create $100 million in revenue to fight homelessness and go towards affordable housing as well. And it also lowers the tax for properties under $1 million. So it so also included in this is a lawsuit filed by real estate groups who argue the ballot language is it combines multiple questions in violation of this Illinois Constitution, and you can't cut tax properties for under $1 million. It's unlawful. You can't cut the tax for the properties under $1 million. So it's a lot of back and forth.
Essentially, they're putting like a favorable measure next to an unpopular one, and they're saying you can't really do that.
Exactly. Right. And so voters will see a lot in campaigns for and against the transfer tax. And the supporters put $700K, but the opposers put $1 million, like I said. So it's really wild. And I just want people to know the truth behind it, like you said. So this will decrease the sales tax under $1 million, gradually increasing the tax over the threshold of $1 million and up to 3% on every dollar above $1.5 million. There's going to be a lot of back and forth, a lot of confusing information. So just making that clear.
Ari, have you seen the campaigns picked up? I've seen some sort of in favor Bring Chicago Home ads on TikTok and Instagram, and I've seen some opposition ads on like CBS, which already starts to tell me something about where people think their voting audience lies.
Yeah, so I haven't seen as much yet, but you know what this really reminds me of? So
the graduated income tax a few years ago.
How did you know I was gonna say that, right? So for those of you who may not be remembering it, I think it was actually on the ballot in 2020, but we had this really big, the campaign for it was really through 2019, and Illinois has a flat tax rate for income taxes, which means if you make $50,000 a year, you're going to be taxed at the same rate as somebody that makes $50 million a year, right? The same rate. This was to amend the Illinois Constitution so that there would be a graduated rate so that then the people who made more money would have a higher rate. And it did not win.
And that was billionaire versus billionaire. That was Governor J.B. Pritzker on one side, who wanted the graduated income tax as a part of his campaign promises. And then you had folks like Ken Griffin on the other side who were like, whoa, I ain't trying to spend more money. I'll move to Florida. Right?
Yes,
and so that was billionaire versus billionaire, and it didn't go through.
No, I got something to say about this graduated income thing, right? Because I was trying to explain this to folks, right, on why this, this would be a good thing for us. People was saying, bro, that I might be a millionaire one day and I don't want to be taxed like that. So I was like, what?
That's the American system, G. Every broke person is just a couple days away from being a millionaire.
It's so insane to me. Like, because, okay.
If I win the lottery when I play next month, and so it's like that mentality.
That made me so
mad. It's a lot. It's a lot, but it's the same.
No, but it's the same in this one. It is people thinking, one day I might be able to buy $1 million homes, $1 million clubs, $1 million warehouses, and I want to be taxed less. Why should people have to be paid more? And again, we've all said it, that's sort of the delusion of America's capitalism, is that if you can convince everybody, they will one day be in the position of the millionaire and billionaire, something that is
then you protect that small population.
Not going to happen.
But look, this is crazy to me, because if I was a millionaire, I would want to just pay more because I make more. Yeah. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, and perhaps, like when you think about the sum of a place, right? Like if billionaires are paying higher taxes and schools are better funded, and roads look better, and people are being better educated, and like in that case, then everyone's values of everyone's homes would go up, right? Like it would also increase the wealth of everyone in that place, actually.
I will say one piece of critique that I think has gotten lost is I do wonder, as we look at the volatility of the real estate transfer tax as a funding source, that thing really depends on how real estate is moving that year, how many sales are made. And so it won't be $100 million every single year in this fund. And so that will have to supplement the city's budget. And so I just want to know that even if Bring Chicago Home passes, that the city remains committed to sort of filling the year-to-year gap. Because if it's, let's more rely on the real estate transfer tax, that pot of money, well, we know from one year to the next that can dip, and we don't want homelessness funding to be that potentially that volatile. So I just want to make sure that the city is willing to sort of pad that funding with continued investment in our, annual city budget.
Yeah. And to be fair, because we're really, talking about like the advertising of all of this, one thing that has also continued to come up is maybe people who are not wealthy, but maybe like, let's say you own like
a 3 flat or something.
Yeah. You own like a 3 flat, but like it's not as if you're just like rolling in the money, how would that affect you? Like there are people who might be in the middle on the margins there who are not just rich, but maybe their houses are now worth more and they can afford to keep it because they rent part of it out to other families. So that has not always been very clearly explained. And I don't think the ads have really addressed that. It's been very much like the cut and dry, the extremes. And I think that is a common question that probably a lot of people have. And they might, when they go into the voting booth, they're going to have that.
Well, that's why we're here, to try and fill in those gaps in between what seems like two diametrically opposed sides. And it is something we will continue to educate folks on as we make our way towards the March primary. And if you have other election questions before you have to step in that booth or mail your ballot back off, please let us know your election questions at 773-780-0246. Every Tuesday, we're doing an election corner on the podcast, and we love to answer your questions. Let's talk about a few stories that maybe didn't get as much attention. They weren't on the front page of our newspapers this week. And Ari, I want to start with you.
Okay.
We have had to manage changing COVID-19 guidelines for, I think we're going into almost 4 years, right? And it seems like those guidelines may be changing once again. And this is important because let's remind people, COVID-19 is still impacting people. In fact, more people are catching the virus now than even a few months ago. And so it is still something we need to be paying attention to. And the CDC, which ultimately the Center for Disease Control and Prevention sort of is the top down of what those guidelines could be, many local and state officials have to follow or at least start to implement those guidelines that could be changing. What's the latest?
Before this, the latest guidance was that if you have COVID, you isolate 4 or 5 days, symptomatic COVID. Now, the latest from the CDC is saying that it is going to be closer to what the guidance is for the flu and RSV, which is kind of a 24 hours after you have a fever, and then you're good to go. And it also does not mention anything about masking. And so there are multiple concerning things with this. The first is that it kind of pushes it closer to equating COVID with the common cold and with the flu. But for so many of us, that is still not going to be the case.
Exactly.
And so it is still very dangerous. And it is not just like the flu, right? The second issue with that is just overall the normalizing of people with wearing a mask when you have symptoms. So many people were hoping that from 2020 that it would become more normal to wear a mask when you have the sniffles, when you have a cold even, right? Like you don't even have to have COVID to wear a mask like it is popular in other countries to protect other people when you aren't feeling well. And so not mentioning masking and leaving that out of the equation when you're symptomatic is kind of continuing this tradition of not prioritizing masking and making it so that people kind of, a lot of people make fun of people wearing masks. I've heard stories of people sending their kids to school with masks and the kids being like, well, why should I wear a mask? When I wear a mask, people look at me funny, So just not making it a normal occurrence when really just wearing a mask when we don't think we feel 100%. And this is what experts in Chicago are arguing, of course, is that masks help.
Facts. And I want to be clear, like when the CDC speaks, I listen. When the Chicago Department of Public Health, when the Illinois Department of Public Health speaks, I listen. What we are largely talking about in this conversation is like what you said. It's about, well, how does this conversation make people perceive COVID-19? Because this has always been, in many ways, a balancing act between taking personal steps to protect yourself, your immediate family, your circle, and also protecting people you generally come in contact with at the grocery store, at the work, at your job, on public transit, and remembering that COVID may be mild for you or people you know, but it can be deadly for other people. And when you are in these general spaces, how the hell are you supposed to know who's immunocompromised or not? Who's had COVID before or not? Who's also vulnerable to growing ill more readily? And we still struggle to understand the long-term impact of multiple diagnoses. And I'm not saying that as a way to be sort of fearful. So you need to protect yourself because you don't know who out there. It's protect others. You could be asymptomatic. Right. And so just be thoughtful of how you're engaging with people and understand if someone is in a mask, if someone does not want to go to a crowded place, continue to respect that because this is life or death. The trauma that we all collectively went through during those early years we're still processing and trying to learn how to live with. And so I'm glad you brought this up. Those official guidelines have not dropped just yet, but we will continue to update listeners as we move forward. Corley, before we move on to our good news, we got some real bad news to talk about. It feels like every other time I have you here, we're talking about some business on the south and west sides just sort of abruptly closing, leaving the neighborhood, sort of twiddling their thumbs to pick up the pieces. What happened this week?
Yeah, KFC closed 3 of their Southside locations. So one on 75th and Lafayette, one on 35th, and one on 83rd and King Drive. They all closed the same time. They was all operated by the same franchisee. No reason was given. They just said it was a normal course of business. And some of the locations were just renovated, which is crazy. So now they're like boarded up and, just there. And a lot of people were complaining on social media. And this happens like a couple weeks after that 87th Chatham Theater just closed down out of nowhere. And people were like kind of just like shocked.
Chatham lost a movie theater and a KFC. Gresham lost a Harold's. Chatham lost a Walmart last year. Like this trickle of it keeps happening. And of course, whether they give a reason or not, it's always, it's about business. And I get it. Like, my family owned a business that unfortunately could not stay open, and it hurt the community. So I get that happens. But that still doesn't speak to what it means like to live through this as your reality day after day, week after week, that your neighborhood is a site of consistently fleeing businesses and sort of a lack of attention and investment from public officials.
Yeah. People complaining about how people need jobs, and these closures are happening amidst that, among the need for jobs and people wanting more. So it's crazy. Like, you got these people who go into these business, they're spending their money there, and they also want to work. So it's like, you closing when we have these needs. It's just wild. It's just have conversations and let us understand what can be done so you can sustain businesses in these Southside communities.
Yeah. And when that happened to Target and they closed all the Southside Targets, at first there was a big, we're going to have some conversations about this. And, we're going to make sure if you open more stores that, we have to discuss why. And, now they'll,
these will become community centers. Maybe that we'll find public benefit in them. And they just sit boarded up.
Yeah, that's my biggest fear for these KFCs, just sitting there dormant, boarded up.
Right now, there's another Target opening up in a North Side neighborhood. So it's just kind of like, there's not even a mention of the loss of the previous stores anymore because that's just so far forgotten. In 3 years, if KFC opens 4 more stores someplace else, they're not even going to remember this time that they closed 3 back to back,
Every single episode of CityCast Chicago every week ends with us taking some time to also look at some good news. This could be something personal, professional, an event you're looking forward to, just something that put a smile on your face this week or is putting a smile on your face now. Ari, I want to start with you. What is your good news for the CityCast fam today?
Yes. So Saturday, I'm going to see Black by Popular Demand, a Black Excellence Review that is at Second City. And I'm going to see it with Sasha Ann Simons at over at WBEZ. So I'm really excited.
If you are interested in seeing Black by Popular Demand, it opened on February 9th and it's going to run through May 25th at Second City. We will drop links in the show notes for you. Corley, what about you? We talking a lot of good events this weekend. What is your some good news?
My good news is that it's still Black History Month, so happy Black History Month, y'all.
Yes,
I'm going to the Blank Gallery. They had this guest book exhibit in honor of James Baldwin's 100th birthday. So they're going to do talking about the importance of arts and culture and the history of Bronzeville, but also connecting the past and the present through stories and storytelling, poetry to kind of celebrate his life, but also connecting it to Chicago, which I think is really dope. So I'm excited to go to that and see what that's like.
Blanc Gallery, located off of 44th and MLK Drive. The event is tonight from 6 to 9 p.m. Shout out to Blanc Gallery. And then I will finish us off. I'm really excited when local theaters seem to be getting sort of reinvestment in a new grand opening. And while there are a few across the city that are currently being worked on, one in Bridgeport is having a beautiful night. Today, the Ramova Theater in Bridgeport is welcoming one of its investors, Chance the Rapper, who is doing his B-sides and C-sides concerts tonight. What was really funny, I saw his social media post where he was like walking people through, but I love how he talked about it. He was just like, I'm walking people through my new music venue. We walking through the Ramova, my new spot. I'm like, that building been there since 1929. But I love that for Chicago. It's like, this is my city, this is my block, these my people, that's my shorty, that's my son, that's my theater, that's my corner store. I love the ownership we have over our city, and to see this theater being revitalized gives me hope for theaters like the one in South Shore. Right? Like the Congress Theater. It gives me hope for projects like the new Avalon Regal Theater. Like, community members want these spaces. They remember their history and they know how much they bring to a neighborhood. I saw Rage Inglewood post a picture of the old Inglewood Theater, which I couldn't even remember growing up. And so just the idea that local theaters are being preserved, reinvested in, it's good to hear that the Ramova has new life. And I got my fingers crossed that in 2024, we're going to be doing something like a karaoke storytellers live at the Ramova. And so I'm excited.
That'll be fun.
That's my hope. That's my hope. We pushing for it. So it's just good to see the programming back, and, to see Chance, one of those people, kind of spearheading it is always cool. We will drop links in the show notes to all of these events: Black by Popular Demand at Second City, James Baldwin exhibit at Blanc Gallery, and the Chance concert at the Ramova Theater. I want to give another huge thank you to our guests. Both of y'all have been here 50-11 times, and it means the most every time y'all come through. Shout out to Crane Chicago, Corley J.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here all the time.
I also want to give a huge thank you to journalist, author, and professor Ariane Nettles.
I'm happy to be here. And, if you want to get at me, text CityCast at 773. I don't know the rest of the number, but they'll give it to you.
Before I let you go, I want to give a huge thank you to the people who make CityCast Chicago and Hey Chicago. Our executive producer is Simone Alisea. Our producer is Michelle Navarro. Our newsletter editor is the one and only Sydney Madden. Additional help this week came from producer Elizabeth Kama and newsletter editor Natalia Aldana. The music we all love is from Sam Thousand, All the Kimonos, and Mark Greenberg from the Mayfair Workshop. Hey, if you love CityCast Chicago nearly half as much as I love making it, continue to support us by sharing us with your friends and family, bookmarking our website, chicago.citycast.fm, save our number in your phone, 773-780-0246, and most importantly, be back here bright and early on Tuesday. We off on Monday, but we back on Tuesday. We're going to talk to you then. Peace.